In this episode, we have been joined by Seema Phull, founder and CEO of ForeOptics. Tell us more about ForeOptics. How the idea germinated in you, and why ForeOptics?
Sure, absolutely. So I was this VP of supply chain strategy at Honeywell Aerospace, which was about a $12 billion business. And during the 2008 timeframe, we actually got a chance to exercise true supply chain strategy. I won't give away the secrets. We did very, very well in that particular transformation. So the next step was, do I want to do this, at a corporate level? Or do I want to go out on my own? I'm an entrepreneur at heart, so I decided I was going to hang up my own shingle, and I decided to start my consulting practice then. And like I said before, in all of my businesses, in all my clients rather, I worked with both large enterprises, mid-sized companies, and all the way along the supply chain, whether you're a small supplier or a large OEM, et cetera. And my recipe is very clear. I'm not going to give you a bunch of binders. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to do this with you. And that actually worked very well with our clients. And so I decided to make a career out of it. And that was, 12 years ago. And it's been a fantastic experience. And that led us to actually doing turnarounds. I would work with a couple of PE firms where they buy distressed assets, and then we help turn around those assets.
Okay, great. So in the ForeOptics, what do you do that sets it apart from its competition?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I feel like we have a recipe that we've honed over the years, and it's a three-part recipe. First is going in, figuring out signal from noise. So if you think about most enterprises, there's no shortage of data. There's no shortage of reports. There's no shortage of, what's happening. But how do you distinguish between what matters and what doesn't matter to your business? So really looking at all of the data, all the information, and understanding what's noise versus what's signal. Most leaders, even today, spend over 60% of their time, supply chain leaders that is, 60% of their time trying to make sense of this data. Then they spend another 30% of their time responding to emails, repetitive non-value added tasks. Then that leaves about 10% of their time to true decision making. So what we've done is we've sort of flipped that model. So in my recipe, the first part is understanding signal from the noise. Second is taking the non-value added part out and really focusing people on what matters. And in the lean world, we call that standard work. And then the third is creating intelligence and integrating that intelligence all throughout the organization. So from C-level to the CEO, all the way down to shop floor. And so what we've done at ForeOptics in the last couple of years is actually turn that recipe into a product, into a platform. And so, the Agentic AI, the Agentic IDS, what we call Agentic Integrated Delivery System, think about it from the perspective of there's 4 common blind spots. Understanding your customer requirements, really truly understanding the customer requirement, understanding your demand and supply to be able to optimize what you should make and sending the right signals to the suppliers, making the products. And then there's this whole thing called aftermarket and being able to provide the aftermarket service that you need. And all of those critical sort of scenarios are opportunities for blind spots. So what we've done is taken this recipe and really focused in in those critical areas. And that's why we call it the Agentic IDS. It's not really fair to call it a supply chain because it's so much more than that.
Let's talk a little more about this Agentic Integrated Delivery System. Is it AI powered?
Yes, absolutely. So we could not do what we want to do. Like I said, I tried this back in 2000. We didn't have, AI capabilities that we have today. So we couldn't have done it. So it absolutely is AI empowered. But, there's a nuance there that I want to make sure that we're really clear about. AI is an enabler. It's not a replacement for human thought and human interaction. So going back to the recipe that you said, right, 60, 30, 10, we're flipping it. So we really should only spend 10% of our time understand the data should be served to us. And that's where AI comes into play and says, here's what you should worry about. Here's what you don't need to worry about. Then really focus in on 60% of the time making decisions. So opening up that bandwidth is where AI really helps, especially with those repetitive tasks.
How it is using the AI in connecting the C-suite to the soft floor and how it has become an enabler.
Sure, absolutely. So, I often joke with my clients that one of my superpowers is that I know how to connect the C-suite to the shop floor. And, the way you do that is not just making the same information available to every tier, but it's creating the context of what's important to every tier, but that serves the same objective at the top level, right? So let's say you've got let's use an example of you want to reduce working capital. Well, that's a C-suite goal. We're going to reduce working capital by X amount. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean to the person who's planning the product? What does that mean to the buyer who's procuring components? What does that mean to the commodity manager or the sourcing director or the new product introduction person that's looking at forward-looking products and selecting suppliers? What does it mean to engineering? So what we do is we actually take that OKR that you've got at the very top and translate that to what it means to each one of those entities. And then we create an operating system that says, this is the information you need to be looking at. These are the types of decisions you need to be making. And these are your, what I would call hotspots. If you start to see these types of issues, you've gone out of bounds from that objective. So it's connecting the organization through context and clarity.
Wow. And what type of industries will be ideal for the ForeOptics, the agentic idea system?
Yeah. It's interesting when you step back, you kind of want to say, well, everybody. But the fact of the matter is that there's some industries that are more ready and are probably the need is more critical than others. So there's top three that come to mind. Aerospace and defense, because as you well know, supplier delays and component shortages are killers. They can bring production down to the ground. Healthcare and life sciences, where supply continuity and compliance are critical. So that would be the second one. And then advanced manufacturing, where it's, operations are very lean, but they have to adapt to a volatile demand. And the resources, the raw materials, et cetera, are very, very scarce. And then obviously high tech and some semiconductors, the global constraints make it also another good candidate. So we also have clients in the consumer goods that actually have reached out to and said, our margins are really thin. So we want to have this type of clarity and this type of agility in our supply chain. So the answer is, think about it from the perspective of supply chains or organizations that have a lot of regulation, that have scarcity of supply, and that are also struggling with margins.
You have been in business for quite some time now. What impact are you seeing in the world?
Yeah. So the impact is, very, very powerful. We are seeing decreases in forecast error. We're seeing increases in fill rates. We're seeing, decrease in working capital. So freeing up cash flow, improvement in EBITDA. All of those are financial, and business results that we're seeing and that we expected to see. What's one of the most interesting results that we're seeing is confidence, or more confidence in organizations to make decisions, better decisions. And that confidence is at lower tiers of the organization. And that is really, really critical because, like I said, like one of the things I joke about with when I brief, C-suite is like, you guys, all of you sitting around the table, including me, I've been part of that team. We think we make all the decisions. Guess what? We only set the strategy, but the strategy gets executed by someone who probably, is much lower in the organization and is more of an administrative person. So having confidence at that level, having the right information at that level, and having them be integrated with intelligence throughout the organization is the real result, because that gives you the tools to be able to deal with anything that comes at your company. It could be tariffs today. It could be a geopolitical situation tomorrow. It could be weather the day after. It doesn't matter because we can't predict what's going to happen. The only thing that we can count on is that there's uncertainty. There's uncertainty on the demand side. There's uncertainty on the supply side. So truly enabling the organizations with that confidence allows you to make sure that you are going to be able to battle through any scenario that comes at you.
Right. So in a sense, ForeOptics, the agentic ideas system, is going to change the leadership culture also. Have you experienced that, and how you have dealt with that? Because a leader, more so when you are talking about the CXOs, when they are in decision making, the last thing that they want to do is to change their culture.
Yes. And there's also recognition that what worked in the past isn't going to work in the future, right? Because the clock speed of innovation is so much faster than it used to be. Every organization, every industry out there, you got competitors coming out every single day. Technology is being introduced every single day. New ways of doing things are being introduced. So there's this recognition that what used to work, where we could count on reports from last week and make decisions based on those, count on KPIs that we were tracking, sort of the lagging indicators, and use those to make decisions, isn't working anymore, and is definitely not going to work moving forward. So I think there's this recognition that we need real-time insight with actionable context. That is really something critical at the C-suite level. And there's also a recognition that we have to shift from reactive to a proactive orchestration. So reactive firefighting to proactive orchestration. And that can only happen if you've got information that's reliable and is timely and allows you to see where you need to take action versus sifting through all the noise.
Can you give us some real life examples where the client really got benefited by using your agentic idea system?
Yep. So one client comes to mind that I can share with you, and it was an aerospace and defense client where part shortages were the biggest issue. And it's really interesting. We actually did a measurement of so before I get into that, it was part shortages were the biggest issue. And when I went and talked to every threshold, every tier of the organization, what I heard was, well, the customer keeps changing their mind. The customer demand is volatile. Like, all right, that's fine. Let's measure it. So I measured the volatility of the customer signal. It was 8%. Then I measured the volatility going out to the suppliers, 38%. Wow. So all of that happened within that organization. It was a very large organization with many, many factories, many, many suppliers. And so, I had to step back and say, no, the issue is not the customer, because the customer is consistently volatile 8%. Based on that 8% volatility, I can predict that supply chain all day long. But what's happening is all of the disruption, all of the second guessing, all of the noise that we add to it internally. So we took a step back. We laid out a organization structure that allowed them to take these second guessing out and created clarity in terms of being able to understand what you need to react to and what you don't need to react to. Within months, we cut the forecast error by 25% and allowed for a reduction in what they used to call emergency orders. And you're familiar with supply chain. Emergency orders are very costly, right? They erode the bottom line. And we shaved off weeks on the procurement cycle, and we gave relief to the suppliers who were critical. And they said, from them said, look, this is what you need to supply. And we increased the on-time supply rate by 30% from the suppliers. So the point being that it's not just about one metric, it's a system. We have to think of it as an integrated delivery system that allows us to make sure everybody is delivering to the organization's requirements so that we can meet the market requirements.
Right. A couple of more questions on ForeOptics.
Sure.
So what does a typical consulting gig looks for you? How much time, and what type of access do you need to get them some measurable results?
Yep. So we are, like I said, we're going full force after this tech platform, right? We built the platform. We're using that to provide results. So I'd like to think of myself as a tech company enabled by professional services, right? So not so much a consulting organization anymore. But to answer your question, what we typically do is we start out with, I would say about 6 to 8 week, sort of the initial understanding of laying out what's the problem, how do we solve it, what are the issues, where are the root causes, and what does this thing need to look like? And that's really the onboarding process. What that allows the organization, the client, to have is full clarity on all the things, all the challenges, and what we need to fix first in order to get results. Then typically about 6 weeks, within that sort of the initial 4 to 6 weeks, we're sort of laying this out. Then 6 to 8 weeks, we got results in the organization. So obviously, depending on the challenges, the time is dependent on the challenges, but in most organizations, within 8 weeks, there's results on the table. I tell my team all the time, in this team, in this world, we can no longer rely on months. We've got to do things in days and hours and not on weeks and months. And so and we really live by that, because that's why, what's important, what's unique about my team is we are all practitioners. I don't hire lifelong consultants. I don't hire fresh graduates who are learning to be consultants. I hire people who have run supply chains, who rolled up their sleeves, understand they can, every single one of my team members, both from the product side and from the services side, can walk into a factory and through observation tell you what's going on without ever talking to anyone. And that's the level of expertise you need to be able to use AI the right way and to be able to leverage and get the benefits of AI, because AI by itself isn't going to solve all your problems. It's got to have that domain expertise to back it up.
Right. Let's talk about the future. Where do you see the future of supply chain going to be in the next 5 years? Will be too long, maybe 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. So, I think that COVID was the reminder for us that supply chains are not static. And they're not, it reminded us how interdependent we are. I think we're going to become even more interdependent. I think we're going to become even more connected. So I think it's going to be, so remember I talked about the clock speed of innovation is so much faster than it used to be. I think the interdependency and the clock speed of innovations are going to create this pressure for us to treat supply chains as a living, learning ecosystem. So what that means is we have to be able to sense, decide, and act with minimal human interaction. And I would say friction, probably, not interaction, friction. And the way to think about that is that's not just automation, that's agentic. That's really AI will have to continuously analyze where are my risks, how do I optimize my decisions, and what actions need to be coordinated across organizations in real time. So it's not just about, I would say, it's not just about decisions between us and our suppliers or us and our customers, but think about the silos within an organization. Those silos are not going away, right? But we have to make those silos more efficient, and we have to break down those silos and flatten the organization. And the only way to do that is through data and through intelligence. So creating that intelligence within the organization is going to help us elevate the human role instead of replacing the human role. And that's really, really important. I'll say it again. Elevating the human role in this whole process should be our key, not to replace it, because humans are not going away.
Yeah.
And, so enabling those decision makers to focus on the vision and strategy while machines do the stuff that none of us really want to do anyway. And the machines will enable the complexity and scale.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's talk about the startup ecosystem, and there is a lot of things which is happening in the supply chain area also.
Yeah.
Here in the US, in India, in Germany, and so many other places.
Yeah.
What do you, with your 25 plus years of, a practitioner of supply chain, what wisdom you would like to pass on to young entrepreneurs who is looking at a supply chain situational problem and coming up with a solution to that for it? How they should approach the market. What are the areas which is really where some startup founder need to focus on so that it can be solved?
Yeah. It's interesting you asked that question, Anshuman, because in addition to being a supply chain practitioner, I'm an angel investor. So I am always investing in entrepreneurs and early startups and good ideas and so on. So this is the advice I give to most of my entrepreneurs that I deal with is, look, the fundamentals aren't going away. Build a business that has fundamentals in place. We've all seen bubbles. We've all seen, sort of the shiny object in the market, and people are running after the shiny object. But those who really, solutions that make it to the market have a fundamental in place. And that fundamental is, does your solution solve a real problem? Does it have a market? And does it grow into a business that can stand on its own? Too often I see companies, I see entrepreneurs saying, I'm building toward an exit. And as soon as I hear that, I'm like, no, I don't want to invest in this entrepreneur, because building towards an exit isn't the right approach. Building a sustainable business will get an exit.
Yeah.
And so Unfortunately, as I look around, I do see a little bit of like race for using AI to sort of like race for the next exit. And so it worries me a little bit as a practitioner, because AI is a tool, it's a technology, it's a capability, and it is fundamentally going to shift the way we think. But we also have a lot of shiny objects that are being thrown out there under the guise of AI that we have to be mindful of.